Before we dive into the preparation needed on your assets, let's look at the export and import process to get those assets into Unreal, because we're going to be using it a lot throughout the course. This is where the rubber meets the road, and it's a simple two-step process. If you've done a good job preparing your assets, this part should go smoothly. But even if you haven't, Unreal does a great job of bringing assets in that aren't optimal. The two ways we're going to cover to export your data from your 3D tool are FBX Export and Datasmith. With FBX Export, assets are exported one at a time. Let's export this coffee table from our previous chapters and take a look at the FBX Export options. Of course, the coffee table is a solid single piece composed of the different shapes. We've gone ahead and attached those together. And we've named it using good naming conventions here. So we've got SM_coffee table. And notice obviously that the stack has been collapsed, so we don't have any modifiers on it. So we'll go ahead and just go to File, Export Selected. You probably already know where this is at. And we will name this the same name we have inside of 3ds Max here. So SM_coffee table. Now, inside the FBX Export options, we're going to make sure this is set on the default for now. Autodesk Media and Entertainment, the preset. And under Include, if we open up Geometry, we'll go ahead and check Smoothing Groups, though I know that in this case we don't have any smoothing groups on the table. But if you have something more organic like a pillow or a couch or any of those types of things that do use smoothing groups, go ahead and turn that on because the export process will take those smoothing groups along with it and Unreal will recognize them. We're going to skip over the rest of this stuff and drop down to Triangulate. You don't have to do this one here because Unreal basically automatically turns every mesh into triangles. And even though technically all 3D meshes are in fact based on triangles, sometimes when you build them, obviously you might build them with quads, four-sided faces instead of triangles. And this will just automatically turn those quads into triangles for us when we export. If we have any animations in the scene, obviously you want to have that checked. Generally, in architectural scenes, there's not a lot, if any, animation, but we'll go ahead and leave it checked. We can also bring in cameras. Just make sure that's checked if it is. You can certainly export animated cameras and bring those into Unreal and use them in Unreal's sequencer. If, of course, you're using any lights that you want to bring over into Unreal, Unreal will be able to import most lights. And then embed media, we don't need to check this because Unreal will automatically locate the textures for the materials on your hard drive, so you don't need to send over the media with it. Now, under Advanced Options, we already talked about this in our chapter on units. We want to be sure we're using centimeters, and we'll just leave this set to Automatic Scaling. Under Axis Conversion, we want to use Z up here. If we don't export with Z up, we might have some incorrect orientation on our assets when we export and bring into Unreal. And that's really all we need here. So again, just to recap, we want to use smoothing groups. We want to triangulate. If we're using cameras and lights, we want to turn those on. And then finally, automatic scaling set to centimeters and Z up for our axis. All right, and now we're not going to actually jump over into Unreal to show the import process. We're going to do that in the next video. Let's just go ahead and look at Datasmith now. So Datasmith gives us a lot of great advantages when exporting into Unreal. First of all, you can export a single asset, such as this coffee table, but the real power in Datasmith lies in being able to export the entire scene in basically just a few clicks. On top of that, Datasmith does a lot of great stuff automatically for us. So you saw in the FBX export options, we had to check a lot of things off and make some decisions. But with Datasmith, it does all that for us pretty much automatically, and it respects instances as well. So that means that it will only create one asset in Unreal, but make sure that if it's an instanced asset in our 3ds Max scene, such as the case with these lamps here, I have a source lamp, and then I have 3 other instances of that lamp. It's going to make sure that those instances are placed in the same spot in the scene in the correct location that they are obviously here in 3ds Max. It also converts textures and materials, adjusts the working unit scale and coordinate system, pivot points, scene hierarchy, and more, all automatically. And it automatically generates light map UVs if we need those. And obviously when we're going to render light maps, we do. And it can convert grayscale bump maps to normal maps for us automatically. So let's go ahead and see what that process looks like here. So it doesn't matter if we have anything selected because we're going to export the entire scene here. So let's go to File, Export. And then we'll just scroll down to UDatasmith, Unreal Datasmith here. And we'll name this ArchViz 001. So you can see here we're going to include all visible objects and just hit OK. So now we can see that Datasmith export is going on down at the bottom here, sending out all of the meshes as part of that Datasmith file. So once the Datasmith export is processed, you're going to get this output warnings window, and it's going to tell you any kind of issues it might have run into while exporting, such as incorrect textures or missing textures. It'll even tell you any kind of issues with partially supported material formats, such as this two-sided V-Ray material here that is not currently supported, missing textures, as I said, and so forth. Now, let's actually take a look at the export location here. There's a few things to take note of. First of all, the UDatasmith file here is actually an XML file. So if we open it up, we can see all of the export properties for all of the various assets in our scene are stored here. Now, generally, you don't want to modify this. This points to all of those assets and gives you the information that Unreal expects when it imports the Datasmith file. But inside here, we also have a folder that contains all of those assets. So if we go in there, we can see we've got all these UDS mesh, Datasmith mesh assets here. These are all the different parts and pieces of your scene, as well as the textures and materials for those. All right. Unreal supports several data formats, including FBX and Datasmith, and it can bring in all sorts of CAD data formats. Exporting that data is the first step to getting into the Unreal Engine, and it's likely something you're already comfortable doing if you've worked in 3D content creation for even the shortest length of time. Now that we've covered the export side, we're going to look at how we import our assets into the Unreal Engine.